So Ken O'Keefe walking away, Mark, has obviously started discussions about who will replace him. Will it be somebody who is has a pedigree with the program? The first names that keep getting brought up: Drew Tate, Chuck Long, of course. I just want to say this right now. I think there is no way on this earth that Chuck Long is the next offensive coordinator. So I'm not saying that, I have some inside information on that, but I would be absolutely shocked if Chuck Long becomes the next coordinator. So last week we ran through like everybody that people were recommending, every big name out there. And Chuck Long was one of the first couple on the list. He's not coming back to Iowa to be an OC. I'm not under Kirk Ferentz. It's not happening. I would be shocked by it. I don't think necessarily that it's a great idea, for the record. So I think he's very unlikely he's going to be here. Drew Tate, I think it's more likely that it could be Tate. I still don't think it will be, but I do think that Tate is more of an option on the board than Chuck Long is. Tate's still in the coaching realm. He just moved back to Eastern Iowa to coach UNI. He's a former Iowa quarterback, so he obviously has more of a relationship with, not that Chuck Long has I'm not implying that he has a bad relationship with Kirk, but I could see Drew Tate. He also worked with Brian Ferentz. They were teammates. I mean, Drew Tate was Brian's quarterback and Brian was Drew Tate's center. So that would at least make sense. There are some other names out there. David Rye becomes the one that people seem to be navigating towards. Former Hawkeye quarterback, struggled with injuries here. He's been in and out of the league. He's on the Packers staff for a while. He was the Vanderbilt OC last year and stepped down from his position at the end of the year. My understanding from what has been reported, I believe it was the Tennessean reported mid-season, that David Rye started the season as offensive coordinator, and I believe they got one, or I shouldn't say even started the season, started fall camp as offensive coordinator, got like 1 week into fall camp, and he was replaced calling plays by someone else on the staff. And then later, after the year was over, he stepped down. So I have no idea what happened there. I have no idea. I believe Joey Lynch, Bill Lynch's son, as you'll remember Bill Lynch at Indiana, I believe Joey Lynch is the one that replaced David Rye as the play caller at Vanderbilt. So sort of an interesting tidbit there. Bill Lynch, by the way, Mark, we're going to talk about candidates. I know he's old, and I know a lot of Iowa fans want young people. They want young guys to come in here. But, Mark, Iowa needs to get the best qualified candidate. I don't care how old they are, okay? It does not mean anything, because we have observed over the last 23 years a style of play that was very much different than under Hayden Fry. People love to mix Kirk and Hayden into the same bag, but let's be honest, the two coaches, these are two guys that almost couldn't be more opposite in philosophy. Yes, they like to run the football. I get that, but past that, there's a lot of differences, and I just don't think it has anything to do with age. I think you can get somebody in there who has innovation as a priority in their philosophy. Certainly, a quarterback's coach is only going to go so far as changing offensive philosophy. But Bill Lynch would be a guy. I believe he coached at DePauw University, which is, I think, Division III. That was his most recent job. I think he retired a few years ago. He would be a guy, Mark, that if I'm Iowa, I might reach out to. I might reach out to Bill Lynch. Because, look, if Kirk Ferentz is only going to be here for 4 or 5 more years, Mark, why do you need a young gun? I mean, I just don't get why you can't fill it with someone who can give you 5 really good years, or however long Kirk's planning on being here. Maybe he's going to be here 7. I doubt that. But I think Bill Lynch would be on my list. I'll tell you another guy who absolutely should be on Iowa's list, Mark, and that's Randy Hedberg out of North Dakota State. I mean, the guy is, I don't know how he's still there. I don't know how somebody hasn't stolen him. He's produced Trey Lance, Carson Wentz, Easton Stick, and we're talking about FCS, and I know it's North Dakota State, but it's FCS level North Dakota State. And I believe Carson Wentz, I had to look back at the recruiting rankings, but I believe Wentz was a 0-star coming out of high school. One of those 3 quarterbacks was a 2-star, and the other was a 3-star. So, like, Randy Hedberg, I think, is in his 60s as well. But again, he's producing NFL quarterbacks, Mark, and he's grooming these guys. And yes, he was the coach with each of those 3 guys. I believe he got hired in 2014, which was Wentz's first big year. Maybe his only. I could look back. I know he was there the length of his career. But Randy Hedberg would absolutely be high on my list. And then the other guy that I would be looking into, if again, I would say Hedberg might be number one on the list. The other guy I'd be looking into would be David Yost. I think is it David Yost or is it Yost? Mark down at Florida International. He, of course, responsible for. He's been everywhere. Been to Oregon, Texas Tech. He's responsible for coaching the likes of Blaine Gabbert, Chase Daniel, Justin Herbert at Oregon, and then most recently Jordan Love at Utah State. He's another guy, just got hired as the OC at Florida International. Would Iowa have a pull with him? Could you get him to come to be a quarterbacks coach at Iowa? I mean, is that a step up or a step down from OC at Florida International? I don't have the answer to that question, Mark. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I have the thought that it's probably an upgrade. It's probably an upgrade in both salary and in stature. But that's arguable. Of course, you're talking group of 5 offensive coordinator. And when you're coordinating an offense, you're showing a different skill set that's elevated. And if you want to continue on that path, obviously the position itself is higher than the quarterback's coach. The initial names that you mentioned were all Iowa connected. There was a connection to the first 3 or 4 names that you mentioned. And until you broke off that theme and mentioned a few other guys, I was going to jump on that, thinking that possibly there was again a conservative approach in staying with what they know possibly and who they know and who they're comfortable with. I think there's something to be said for that, but hopefully they're not too invested in that direction.
Well, the other name that everybody wants to bring up is Tony Raziopi. And we talked about this in the segment last week, Mark. I don't know Tony personally. I know a lot of NFL players have said very good things about Tony Raziopi. And again, I'm not trying to knock the guy. I don't know him personally, and perhaps he'd come here and succeed. But on paper, that would be he'd be my last choice, because he's not proven himself at this level to be able to be a position coach at this level. And you stack him against potential other candidates out there, like a Randy Hedberg. I mean, there's no comparison, Mark. There is absolutely no comparison. And we talked about the potential conflict of interest of bringing in the private coach of your starting quarterback or your presumed starting quarterback in Spencer Petras. And it'd be different if Spencer Petras were lighting the world on fire, but he's not. And a lot of fans want him gone. They want to see Alex Padilla or Joey Labas. So bringing in his private coach makes absolutely zero sense to me. Now, I could be wrong. I know people disagree with that. But I agree with you, Mark. I don't know why you would have to stick with the Iowa ties. A lot of people are kind of glued to that. Like, we got to get somebody who's got Iowa ties. It's got to be Long, Tate, Raziopi, or Rye. Maybe one of those guys would be the best candidate for the job. But, Mark, there's a lot of guys out there, and I just mentioned a few of them. And yes, 3 of those 4 guys are fairly old. David Yost is not real old. But, they're all they've proven themselves. These guys are producing NFL talent. Now, Bill Lynch, I'd have to look back at Bill Lynch's track record as far as production to the next level. But, I mean, that guy was a tremendous offensive coach, Mark. You know that. And I think if he were willing to come here to be your quarterback's coach and he were willing to give you 5 or 6 more years, you'd absolutely entertain that thought.
Yeah, I would only go in the direction of Raziopi if I believe that he was by far the candidate.
And how do you? I just want to know because some people believe that. Some people believe it's an absolute shoo-in that he should be the guy. I just want to know, how do you gain that knowledge? Like, what are all these fans that are on message boards saying this? Like, where are they getting this information? And I'm not by any means claiming that I'm in the know in comparison with a lot of people, but I just want to know where that. Like, you look on as far as a resume and their past. Yeah, he played briefly. In fact, he actually, at the quarterback level, when he was a player, my understanding in doing some research about Tony Raziopi is that he was at an FCS school, lost the starting job, and transferred down to like Division III. All right. Then he played like over in Italy, played football over in Italy. And that doesn't mean you can be a terrible player and be a really good coach. I mean, I guess that's possible. But he's a high school coach. He's a high school coordinator. He's not a head coach right now, Mark. He's a high school coordinator at Franklin High School out in New Jersey. They have had a losing record every year he's been there. Okay. I just want to. I know he's been part of the Manning Passing Academy or whatever that is. I'm not trying to knock him. I just think that Iowa can do much better. And this is a good comment from Nick here in the chat. He says, we have $600,000 to go find a quarterback coach. I mean, there's absolutely no reason not to shoot for the stars here, Mark. And I hope that Iowa does. I hope that Iowa does. And to me, on paper, from what I know, Iowa can do better than any of those names that were connected to the Hawks.
We also had a comment coming in from someone who's not aware of who Chuck Long is. So not making fun of that, but he's an Iowa legend. Google him, but I'll give you one line on him. As D-Rock Irish responded that he was, I believe, a pretty good player. He was second in the Heisman balloting in the closest Heisman vote in history.
To who? So and he lost to who?
The name Bo Jackson could be displaced by Chuck Long. It was that close.
And do you remember who was the third guy in that race that stole votes from Chuck?
Chuck Long was second to Bo Jackson, stole votes from, I would guess that he was a Big Ten player or a quarterback, Big Ten player in 1985. In 1985. Oh, my goodness. Well, Michigan went Jim Harbaugh. Michigan went 10-1-1. They finished number 2 in the country, won the Fiesta Bowl.
It was
Harbaugh was the quarterback.
It was not Harbaugh.
Okay.
I'm trying to look for the guy's name because I know he was the running back at. Go ahead.
Yeah, if you give me some clues, I should be able to come up with it.
He was the running back at Michigan State.
Oh, it was Lorenzo White.
You got it. That's it.
Okay.
So, anyways, I had an interesting conversation with Coach Patterson about Chuck Long the other day, and of course that race came up. So, and for the record, if you're a young fan, and like Cole is not an Iowa fan, I know Cole is a Husker fan. Cole is one of our very genuine and loyal listeners, but he is a Husker fan. So I appreciate Cole being here. By the way, and Cole, to answer Cole's question, that's a wide open race right now. I mean, I think can we agree with that, Mark? I mean, you'd probably fall back. I think it's easy to fall back on Wisconsin. They bring back Allen and whatnot, but it's going to be a real close race. But no, as far as it relates to quarterback, the quarterback's coach, shoot for the stars. Those would be my top 3 guys. Right now, I'd put Randy Hedberg at the top of my list. I'd look at David Yost, and then I'd maybe entertain the Bill Lynch idea.
Yeah, I just think that the Raziopi hire is out of reach for this program in that it just doesn't seem like the type hire that this program would make. And so that's a fortunate thing based on your perspective, it seems. But it just doesn't seem, it's an out-of-the-box selection. So it would also be an
easy one, Mark. It'd be the easy way out. You go hire a guy that has worked with your quarterbacks, is going to be working with Marco Lainez when he gets here. He worked with Nate Stanley. The coaching staff obviously knows Tony. You might be right. I hope you're right. And you probably are. I fear that might be what happens. And I can't imagine it. And yet I fear it. So, and David Rye, for the record, David Rye would probably be, as of right now, from what I know, I'm no coaching expert. I'm not going to be able to tell you, I did do a little research this week for this show, specifically regarding quarterbacks being produced and sent to the league. And, obviously Iowa's not going to be able to grab Alabama's quarterbacks coach or Ohio State's quarterbacks coach, but looking at some mid-majors that have produced really good quarterbacks, Western Kentucky, of course, would be near the top of the list as well, most recently with Bailey Zappi. But see, most of these guys, the Western Kentucky quarterbacks coach just got hired as the OC at TCU. Like a lot of these moves, these guys who would be top candidates for a job like this, a lot of these guys have already found new jobs. They've already gotten coordinator jobs elsewhere. And that is because the moves were made earlier in the offseason. We're already almost to March. We're literally a month away, less than a month away from spring practice. So That people that knock the idea of hiring somebody who was close to retirement, who was actually in retirement. I don't understand that, because you've got a head coach who's close to retirement, and philosophy is not based off of age. It's just not. And I've had people bring up Coach Don Patterson. I have, this is not anything that was prompted by Don. I can just say from my own perspective, Mark, if I'm Iowa, I would absolutely look at Don Patterson. He lives in Iowa City. He honestly, he might be the most. Randy has quite a track record. I don't know that Don Patterson would come out of retirement, but it would be. I don't know why you wouldn't. Why would you not ask Don Patterson? He's right there. He loves the Hawks. I guarantee you money, and I'm not speaking for Don, but I guarantee you money would not be a factor. It just wouldn't be. I don't understand why you wouldn't. But the fact of the matter is, Kirk probably had this. I don't think Ken's announcement blindsided Kirk. I would be very surprised if that blindsided Kirk. I'm sure that Ken made Kirk aware of this a long time ago, perhaps even before the bowl game. I don't know. But my point is, they probably had somebody lined up. We've not heard anything official. Perhaps there are still interviews occurring. They got to make a decision here in these next few weeks, and I would just doubt that Ken would announce so late. And it is late. If he had announced in first week of January, that'd have been give you some time. But to announce second week of February, that doesn't give you a lot of time if you're blindsiding the coaching staff to replace your quarterback's coach, whether you like him or not. Ken O'Keefe's been a part of that program a long time. So wouldn't be surprised if Coach Ferentz already has somebody lined up, but we'll just have to wait and see.
I wonder what a quarterback's coach schedule, the time investment is compared to other coaches on the coaching staff. And I'm not trying to say that it's less, but obviously the players that you're responsible for is less in volume. You've got 5 or 6 quarterbacks on the roster. You probably really need to give time and attention, not that you disregard anyone, but to 3 players who are going to reasonably be playing or have the possibility of playing. And just thinking, that thought just came to mind in you bringing up Don and him being in semi-retirement. He's certainly not fully retired. He works in various capacities, but just the time investment, I don't know what that is.
I'll just say this, and again, this is not stemming from any conversation I've had with Don. Don has more energy, Mark, than 99% of 71-year-olds. Okay, that's
sure
a fact.
He does.
And Ken O'Keefe is 3 years younger than Don, but I'm biased because I'm friends with Don Patterson. But on this, I would at least consider that, and maybe Kirk has. I don't know that, and it's not my business. These personal conversations that go on between Don and Kirk, but to have him right there in your backyard, assuming that Kirk isn't going to be there much longer, it would only make sense that you would entertain it. Let's remember that Don Patterson is the all-time winningest coach at Western Illinois. Okay, he was the coordinator for Hayden Fry. He was, he worked almost basically every position besides offensive line while he was on staff with Hayden at Iowa. He's the assistant head coach and quarterbacks coach at UConn. He worked at Buffalo. I mean, he's been everywhere. He's been in the business a long, long time. He knows Iowa football inside and out. He knows Spencer Petras. I know he's had just from my conversations with Don in the past, Mark, he's had conversations with Spencer Petras. I think Spencer Petras respects him. I think Brian Ferentz respects Don Patterson. So that's all I'll say. That's just my thinking on it is why not at least, have that conversation. And Kirk is friends with Don. So maybe that conversation has been had and maybe it will be had.